Hey folks, Simon here again with another Coach's Corner. Now this week I'm going to talk about 3 questions that I always get asked about nutrition and how it can help you gain lean muscle mass, help you lose weight and stay energized. And these are like common questions I get asked all the time. So what I thought I'd do is I would run through these 3 things that I always get asked, clarify a few points, and hopefully that's going to help you get the best out of your nutritional choices too. So, as I like to say, let's get into it. First of all, the thing I think that I need to talk about straight off is that when I'm working with the cyclists that I coach and work with in the Facebook group that I run, is we talk about healthful practices to start off with. So there are some basic principles that we all need to follow, and then off the back of that we can kind of be a bit free and flexible with the food that we eat. So let's do the boring stuff first. Number 1 is that we all need to eat a certain amount of calories to make sure we get plenty of energy to be able to fuel our day and also to be able to fuel our training. So if you don't eat enough calories throughout the day, yes, you're going to lose body weight, but you're just not going to have enough energy currency to be able to turn the pedals round, work hard in the gym, and have enough energy to do what you want. So it's really important that you kind of understand how many calories you need to be eating on a day-to-day basis. Let's just talk quickly about calories and body weight and do they really matter? Now, the internet is rife with misinformation on this, and you'll see a lot of people saying that actually it's nothing to do with calories. You've got to make sure that you keep your insulin level low because insulin is a bad guy. These people have got it all wrong. Yes, insulin will help you store carbohydrate and energy into a muscle, but we don't always hike up insulin levels throughout the whole day, every day. So we have this ebb and flow of insulin and glucagon, which basically pulls energy from the cells and pushes energy back into cells. So these 2 hormones are important. So to clarify one thing, calories are the most important thing to look at when we're trying to control our body weight. Right, now we've got that lemon out of the room. Let's talk about what is healthful, especially for older cyclists, for people who are trying to maintain lean muscle mass. And why do we need to do that in the first place? Do we need to eat differently to make sure that we are supporting our aging physiology? Now, in some of the other videos, I've talked about this a little bit more deeply, but yes, the answer to this question is yes, we really do. The first thing that we need to think about is eating enough protein. Now, if you didn't know, as we get older, we develop something called sarcopenia, which is basically degradation of our muscles. Now, annoyingly, this starts at the age of 30, and it just progresses as we get older. So the older we get, the worse it gets. What you can see per decade is a loss of muscle mass between 3 and 5%. That's quite a lot. Now, there is a way that we can mitigate this. First and foremost is training is really important. So this is why I advocate for older cyclists, not just to ride the bike, but to hit the gym. Because if we hit the gym, we're going to stimulate our muscles, we can hold on to our lean muscle mass. But we also need to have something added in on top of that equation, and that is eating plenty of protein. Because sarcopenia is also seen as protein resistance within the muscle. And this is something to really consider. So when you look at the science behind it, basically means is that our muscle becomes more resistant to taking on protein. So we need to eat more protein in our diet to elicit the same responses we did when we were younger. My recommendation is this, is we try and get between 1.8 and 2 grams per kg of body weight, and try and spread that across 4 meals a day. When you look at the science, it says that's kind of like an optimal range. And when we're talking about protein, I'm talking about as much quality protein as possible from things like dairy, animal proteins, and whey protein. If you're a bit more vegetarian and if you're vegan, then potentially what I would say is you need to look at things like hemp protein, because having a supplement is going to bolster your protein intake and make sure you're getting all the branched chain amino acids to build a complete protein. Just something to really think about. Let's talk about carbohydrates, because there's a lot of controversy on the internet about whether we need carbohydrates at all to fuel our training. Well, look, here's the thing. This is the reason why I think we need carbohydrates. When you look at the science, it says that carbohydrates are muscle sparing. So if you think about it, as we get older, we find it harder to maintain lean muscle mass. We find it harder to hold on to our muscle mass. So if we were taking a lot of carbohydrates out of our diet in favor of a higher fat diet and a low protein diet, we're minimizing the amount of lean muscle mass that we are maintaining, especially if we're training hard. And it's important that we think about these things, because what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to educate people that work with me, is that we're trying to age as robustly as we can do. So by taking out protein and dropping out carbohydrates, we're probably not helping ourselves in maintaining lean muscle mass. And bear in mind, muscle is what drives us on our bike. It helps us push hard, climb hills faster. We want to hold on to as much lean muscle mass as we can. So what is the minimum amount of carbohydrates we need to be eating to make sure that we're holding on to lean muscle mass and fueling our training? Now, this is the minimum that we need for health. Now, a lot of people argue the point, say we don't need carbohydrates for health. And I am digressing a little bit here on this point, but here's the thing to get across to you. Carbohydrates can improve our health, especially if we're eating whole foods carbohydrates, because of the resistant starches in it, prebiotic fibers, probiotic fibers that come with it. These are really important for our overall health. So when people are lamenting about not needing carbohydrates, they don't often talk about the benefits of carbohydrates and what they can give us. Anyway, back to what we need in terms of minimal amount of carbohydrates. So the minimum amount of carbohydrates needs as an individual is 1.2 grams per kg of body weight. But frankly, that is pretty low. And also, when we're training hard, we want to make sure we've got plenty of energy. And here's the important thing. Carbohydrates give us that immediate punch of energy that we need, especially if we're training hard and doing sort of like higher ends training, which, yes, we should be doing when we get older. We can't just ride around slow everywhere, because that's going to make us slow. It's not going to help stimulate muscle growth. So we need to have that element of high energy training, and we need carbohydrates to make sure that we can fuel that, and also that we're holding on to lean muscle mass. So what should we be eating? Between 5 and 7 grams of carbohydrate per kg of body weight will make sure that we are getting plenty of energy so that we can train effectively. Righty, let's talk about fat, because it's important for us to understand that fat is important for our overall health, and therefore we need a minimal amount of fat to eat to make sure that we support our hormonal health and also our immune health. So, how much fat do we need? Anywhere between 0.5 and 1.2 grams per kg of body weight. That way you're making sure you're getting the right amount of fat to support your hormonal health and also your immunity. But a word of warning here, 0.5 in my book is a little bit low. And I would pretty much say to people, if you're dieting hard and you need to work out how many macronutrients you need to fit in, make sure that you're on the upper end of the 0.5. So I'd hit it around about 1 gram per kg of body weight, just to make sure that you're holding on to your hormonal health and your immunity. Let's talk about fiber. Oh, boring old fiber, but here's the thing, this is why carbohydrates are so good. If you're eating the right amount of carbohydrates, you're probably hitting the right amount of fiber, in which case you're fine. The issue is if you're a very high fat dieter, and that's where I think where people struggle to get the right amount of fiber in. So it's just something we need to be really mindful of. Righty, well, that's a lot of numbers, isn't it? But here's the thing, do you know what you're probably thinking, oh, do I need to figure these things out for myself? And the answer to that question is yes, I think we really do, because as we get older, we need to understand how we need to fuel ourselves differently, what we need to eat in terms of protein, carbohydrates and fats to make sure that we're healthy, to make sure we're holding on to lean muscle mass, because we lose it hand over fist as we get older. And I don't know about you, but I want to be able to age exceptionally well. I want to be strong. I want to have the ability to keep riding up hills fast, and having lean muscle mass is going to help me do that. So focusing on my nutrition and making sure I'm eating all the right things is going to help me do that. So these numbers really are that important for us to understand. Anyway, you can see that I'm quite passionate about this, but this is the thing. When people come to me at Velo Performance and we start talking about nutrition and I start helping them understand what they need to look at in terms of sort of like minimal sort of protein, carbohydrates and fats, they suddenly realize that totally under eating for what they're trying to achieve. But when they start putting it into practice, and it's pretty straightforward to do, they notice a massive change in their ability to ride their bike better. Now, who doesn't want that? So I'm going to leave that there today because I've given you a lot of information. If you haven't written it down or you want to go back across the video to get those numbers, crack on. That'd be really cool. And do me a favor, will you? Just hit like, hit subscribe, and then share this with your friends, because I am trying to get out some really good evidence-based information for people to get the best out of their nutrition and the best out of their training as you get older as a cyclist. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I'll be back next week.